Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Now, there are obviously other news elements happening this week, and that are important to get to. But I think it's crucial that we recognize that the world, as I was saying in the beginning, didn't end. We'll talk to Philip Bittner in the second hour about what's going on in Ukraine. But if you'll recall, at my count, there have been 5, maybe even 6 moments where we were going to push the Russians and the world was going to end. That if you don't just let them attack, if you don't just let them seize the parts of Ukraine that they want, it's going to be nuclear Armageddon and we're all dead. This is effectively nuclear blackmail was working on members
of the... Whatever you do, don't stand up to the bully.
Exactly. Because if you just leave them alone, they'll stop there. If you just stop pushing them, they'll simmer down and then we'll all normalize around them. It's like this weird, 1950s idea of a family sitting around and dad has just raged at the family, or mom's completely hammered and screaming at the chandelier, and the rest of the family's just sitting there eating their vegetables quietly going, it's fine, maybe just let them be and everything will be fine, and God knows it always works out fine. But when it comes to the Russians, it would behoove us to remember that this is not even the second time they have done this. This is, they do this, I'm not even including parts of Africa and Syria, but if you look at Chechnya and Georgia, that is the template for their expectations and their activities in Ukraine at the very least. And the idea is seize the ground, salami slice your way across the country, seize the useful parts, tax the parts, or I guess push the parts that you're not interested in out into the poverty-stricken areas, and basically starve the country over a decade where they'll actually look forward to you taking the place over. That's been the plan in Georgia, to the point where after the attack, and I've shown this map on my show a couple of times, but after the first Georgia attack, they continued to just move their fence about every 3 months another 200 yards, and they just kept doing it mile after mile after mile, and to the point where the pipeline that comes from Azerbaijan that goes through Georgia is now in Russian control. It's on Russian land that they have legally seized. This is years after the Georgian War that they did this. And it wasn't about, it was a part of the USSR, or Azerbaijan's going to join NATO, or any of that stuff. Our security matters. It was so that the pipeline was now on their turf, and therefore you had to pay them transit fees. And if they wanted to, if Turkey didn't do what they wanted, or somebody else didn't want to do what they wanted, they could blow it up. And in this case, it wasn't even their oil. It was coming from Azerbaijan. So this is exactly the plan. It's why they wanted Crimea, other than, I guess, to vacation, which is amazing, right? Because think again. You have to know that during the time, it's been fascinating to watch as people have been evacuating, or these shots of things exploding in Crimea, either that were hit by Ukrainian HIMARS or that were blown up by a Russian soldier smoking too close to something. That during that time, the footage shows people at the beach. That's
insane.
The footage is filmed by people vacationing in Crimea. Now, I understand Crimea being a vacation spot. It seems lovely. It does seem, however, very odd that you would continue to vacation in it when it is effectively an open war zone on someone else's territory that your country has declared. Maybe the arrogance is that we're going to take the whole country, and they bought into the whole, we're going to take this country in 6 days nonsense. And so they're like, time to hit the beach. But now You've got Vladimir Putin, assembling 300,000 new soldiers. 87,000 have been sent to the front. The other 200 plus have been sent to training, which lasts all of 6 days. Those 87 that go to the front, 20,000 have been killed or captured already since the beginning of the mobilization. It's a meat grinder. They're just sending these folks in. So, But the idea is, and this is kind of goes to this guy, being pro-Putin, anti-Ukraine, the guy who attacked Paul Pelosi, and the videos that he watched from Jimmy Dore were all, Putin said, you had your chance, but now I'm going to destroy your country. That was one of the videos. And the other one is effectively blaming Zelensky and saying, for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, the Jewish president of that country is protecting Nazis, and that all of the former allies, all of NATO has decided, you know what, we were wrong. We take it back. The whole World War II thing was wrong. We're now on the side of Nazis. We haven't thought it through, but it just seems like a good flip. It should just be, like on a dime, every allied force just decided when, by the way, I guess because Biden was in office, to suddenly support Nazis. The dude who ran against the idea that there are good people on both sides. It's going to be important to pay attention to this, to the languaging around this, but almost everybody that I've seen talk about this, it talks about the Russian attack and the potential for nuclear war in terms of let them have it. Let them have these parts of Ukraine. They'll never move forward. And then we also, if they take this as a sign that they can continue to do this in more of Georgia or in Chechnya, or eventually go after Azerbaijan and Armenia because they just want it. That's not our business. Let's build that wall around ourselves, both diplomatically and geopolitically, and call it a day. This island America. Yesterday, there was one guy who was, I think he was on OAN, and he was talking about how not only do we need to close the O's, Gene the Jesus Machine on Flashpoint was saying that Donald Trump needs to, in his interview with him, Donald Trump said we need to close the border, not we need to keep all these illegals out, we need a strong border. We've moved past that. It is now close the border. Everybody is done. Right? This is it. No more brown people coming across it. They're coming from all over the world. They're bringing crime. So therefore, the wall is there. Shut the gate. End of story. Nobody comes. That's it. And then this guy on OAN is saying we need a renewed Chinese Exclusion Act, which is you can't trust. Because we just busted a bunch of Chinese spies. The FBI and all these guys busted a bunch of Chinese spies that were operating in the university system, that were going after Chinese dissidents living in the United States. And this guy was making the case, we can't trust any of them. So we need a Chinese Exclusion Act. And between this and the Muslim ban, so a Muslim ban, a renewed Chinese Exclusion Act, and we need to close the southern border. I'm seeing a trend in the current state of the Republican Party and what is considered okay dialogue within them. Now, granted, on the fringes of it. Yeah. I will leave that caveat in, because one thing I will say is that from Ted Cruz to Mitch McConnell, and I do think that's the arc currently of functioning senators, for example, on the right. I mean, Cruz is touring around in his bus and trying to be like Fat Gates, but but between them, he actually files bills and sits on committees and tries to pretend he's a real senator. Both of them decried the attack on Paul Pelosi in no uncertain terms and said they prayed for his fast healing and all that kind of stuff. So that's good. That's a good thing. That's reasonable, and it happened very quickly. But in the soft language world of the right now, it has devolved into straight up paranoia. It is just a matter of, it reminds me of post 9/11 reaction to Muslims, except it's everybody.
Oh, yeah.
It's just everybody now. And you have to, and I want to, before we go to break, I want to remind everybody that there is an upside in some ways to that thinking, because it becomes a self-policing ideology. These folks are, and the example I will give is the people who have been watching the polls while armed and masked. If we, like, again, not poll watchers, I don't even know these people are American citizens. I would need proof. You're wearing a mask and you're carrying a gun. How do I know you're not a cartel member? Please. But anyways, let's assume these people are Americans and they certainly are not left-leaning. They're sitting down there. Those folks have been watching these drop boxes night and day for weeks. And they've been filming them, and they're going to lose some of these races. They might win a couple, but they're going to lose, and it'll match up largely with what the polls are saying here and there with some variance in it. And when they find no massive fraud, when they don't ever get on tape some dude with a Santa sack full of ballots, shoving them into the drop box in the middle of the night, when they never end up with footage like that, and their candidate loses fair and square, what do you think's going to happen? Their own people are going to turn on them. Why didn't you see it? It must have happened. You were filming the whole time.
They won't believe it.
No, you weren't there. That's right. They won't believe a word they're saying, and they will turn on their own. This is a self-policing ideology like any cult. It can't survive. And honest to God, it's one of the reasons why Antifa isn't technically an organization, or there aren't, big revolutionary communist groups in the United States that last more than 18 weeks for the same reason. Because these are self-policing cult ideologies, and the minute anybody says, well, I don't think that sounds right, they're out. They're a heretic. And anytime you get into a situation where somebody is heretical simply for stating the truth, you're on the path to destroying your own organization. When they keep showing these folks sitting on these trucks and stuff, other than the fear that the mild worry that one of these guys might be a lunatic likened to this David DePage dude, or DePepe dude, that's the most of my worries. That's one of these guys popping off because he's just had it and he knows there's a crime there. So let me see inside your car. Open up your trunk where he's holding somebody, like that kind of thing. But it's not going to result in all of them rising up. And I would like to remind everybody that these pictures you're seeing of these guys, there's 4 of them. 4 men that you have seen over and over and over again. Every in your feed, every time you're scrolling, same 4 guys. But psychologically, there's an effect in social media that's enough. There's 2 different guys, 2 different guys, 2 different guys, 2 different guys, as if there's an army of these idiots out there, and there is not. There's a legitimate concern that one of these folks might pop off, and that has to be watched. On the other side, there are only 6 of these dudes. There's like 8 in one state and 5 in another. There's more militia guys in Michigan than that. So I am not ready to clamor about the destruction and the end of the world based on this kind of activity when we've seen this in decades previous. We have. This is not the first year people invented the idea that Mexicans were illegally voting in Arizona. This is not the first or the second or the 5th cycle. This stuff was, I heard about this. I remember hearing about this in LA in the 90s, and it wasn't true then. And there were lunatics in Orange County who were, going to form a line around polling places and check. So remember, folks, if anything, this is to scare people. What they want to do is scare you away from voting. They want to make you scared to show up. And that's by going, oh my God, what if I go to the drop box and there's some guy with a gun and then wave and smile at him as you drop your ballot in and go home. Because the second any of them do anything, their cause is dead in the water. And they know it. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Considering the audio issues, the show is zipping by.
Really is.